At Chris Kehler Holistic, we demonstrate real healing and real caring to your health issues and needs. Our solution for you is an alternative to the alternative. Our out-of-the-box treatment methods are aimed to your specific well-being and are quite different than most. Venturing down the realm of quantum energy healing, Chris uses unique modalities of healing, such as spiritual intervention with pendulum dowsing, sacred geometry tools such as the neutralization, divinity, and sun ring. Another tool Chris uses is a 5-tiered pyramid affectionately known as the Silver Light Pyramid to activate quantum activity within the body. Also, Chris Kehler Holistic uses radionic technologies in various platforms with specific liquid mineral ionics to balance out excesses and deficiencies within the body. At Chris Kehler Holistic, our goal is to get tangible and measurable results in the least amount of time possible so you can carry on with what's important in your life. Another advantage to this unique energy healing is that it can be done at a distance healing session, so location is not a barrier and can be done conveniently at your home, office, just about anywhere through Skype or telephone conferencing. Eliminate costly protocols, expensive monthly supplements, high-priced allopathic operations, invasive surgeries, and dubious medication applications that keep you trapped in a financial and health rat race. Get a specific, customized, out-of-the-box solution tailored for your health recovery. At Chris Kehler Holistic, we are warm, welcoming, and want to put you at ease with your visit to us. Please visit www.chriskehler.net for further information as we welcome your questions and inquiries to starting this unique journey. At Chris Kehler Holistic, we want to show you that we are the alternative to the alternative and the out-of-the-box solution to customize an answer for you to spend less and gain more in your high-vibrancy journey. Visit www.chriskehler.net. Real healing and real caring to your health needs.
Mr. Chris Kehler.
Hey everybody, welcome to another rip-roaring edition of A Quantum View. I am your host, Chris Kehler. Now, if it sounds like I got a bit of a cold, yes, just kind of getting over one. Why is the healer sick? Well, it's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah,
Instead
it's not cold
of
up
3
there,
weeks,
right?
I had it 3 days, so that's kind of cool. Now, what I did find out, though, by getting this, is that all of the seasonal type cold and flu that we go through, it is witchcraft spell of origin. So it is something that's intended on us. And that's how I got rid of it so quick, is I got it for a reason. That's how I can figure it out. And basically it is a witchcraft spell in the form of a coronavirus in your causal body. So I got rid of all of that stuff. It helped in a big way. So right now I'm just finishing off the symptoms of it, a bit of congestion, and it's all good. Now, the world of energy. Everybody keeps on asking what's new, what's new. Here's something huge that I found Thursday last week. The way I found this, I was working with one of my clients. Now, this gentleman, I got him off of dialysis. I cured his lymphoma, but his prostate would not go down. He had this huge prostate. He says, Chris, it's hard. It's in the way. It's an annoyance. We got to work on this. And we did like 10 sessions on it. And I just couldn't make this thing budge. Fortunately, with energy work, you don't have to do the digital exam when you're working with a prostate. So that's what I love about energy work. Keeps you nice and clean, if you know what I mean. What I was told through my pendulum is that there is a clone of his prostate somewhere else. So his prostate was cloned. So I said, okay, let's work with it. So what I did is I just said the word prostate clone false. And he said right there and then he could feel it reducing just in front of him, just like that. Boom, gone. It's reduced. So that started me thinking, okay, there's got to be something to do with this. So I started using that theory with other people, and it's been making huge differences with everybody. So what I'm finding is if you have a trouble area, you have asthma, you have diabetes, you have something like that where there is one specific area always a problem. If you get rid of the clone aspect of it, just say clone false, separate any clone of that area, all of a sudden that area starts to get better and it opens the door a lot wider. So we've been working a lot with that and getting some fantastic results. Let's introduce our guest. For the past 30 years, Dr. Eliezer Ben Joseph has been at the forefront of alternative health and education to the public. He is a board-certified traditional naturopath and numerously trained worldwide and holds 3 doctorates. He is also a master herbalist, iridologist, certified RAYID Master, that's psychological assessment of the iris of the eye, and an instructor in Polarity Therapy and network therapeutic bodywork. He is also a certified personal trainer, holistic health instructor, and has taught diet, nutrition, therapeutic bodywork, and personal development for 25 years. Dr. Ben Joseph is also the host of the top-rated Natural Solutions radio show, a call-in talk radio show on KTSM 690 Talk Radio in El Paso, Texas, for the past 18 years. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Eliezer Ben Joseph. How's it going, my friend?
Hey, very good, very good. It makes it Ellie, just like in Ellie-YAZUR.
Eliezer. Okay.
Actually, when I was a
I've
kid
been practicing the name all day
name.
long, and I knew as soon as I get on the microphone, I'm going to mess it up. So my apologies.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you very much for that intro. 2 of the things, I'm also been knighted for my work. I'm the Grand Naturopath of the Sacred Medical Order of the Knights of Hope, and I'm also the Grand Commander of the Sacred of the Knights of St. Lazarus of Jerusalem. And these are 1,000-year-old medical orders that you have to be invited into. And so it's really cool because I travel with a diplomatic passport. We have NGO status at the United Nations. So that's really nice.
Those are credentials that not everybody can just go out and get. Those are interesting. Topic of today's show is hidden healing around the home. Now, before we get into that, I want to thank you very much for sending me your video. What is the name of the video that you have?
So you got it. I wasn't sure if you got it. Yes, that's called The Battle for God in Science.
Now, when I put this video on, I started watching it, and to me, it's okay, all stuff I basically know and follow. As you got more into it, what I started really seeing is a presentation explaining, let's say, to somebody who isn't spiritual-minded or somebody who isn't quite awakened yet, and it was a very, very easy to follow, lots of different points on comparing spirituality against the whole spiel of scientists and doctors, where Stephen Hawking says, yeah, God doesn't exist. When we die, we just go away and nothing happens. To me, it was a really interesting way to present the theory and the whole reality of spirituality.
Oh, I enjoyed doing it. Why it came out and how it came out, actually, back in 2011, January, Hawking came out with his new book called The Grand Design, and he wrote it with another person. But the intent of the entire book is that there is no consciousness and that God is not necessary for the creation of the universe because of the law of gravity. But first of all, nobody can explain the law of gravity, and it's a round sentence. You can't, it goes nowhere. So for him to say that because of the law of gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing is a misnomer. It just can't happen. So he came out with that, and the other principle was that there is no consciousness. So the first thing I wanted to ask him is, if there's no consciousness, who wrote your book? Anyway, it talks about all the newest theories in cosmology and in physics. Again, I have a doctorate in science, a doctorate in medicine. So I love, I spend my day looking at microscopes. I do live cell analysis, dark field, since about 1983. And so there's very few people doing it. So I spend my day looking at the universe on a slide. So I love looking at pictures of the universe as a whole from Hubble, and it's all the same. The only difference is size. You know, when you look at a lightning bolt and you compare that to huge, giant, 100,000 long lightning bolts in space, the only difference is the size, is magnitude, but it's exactly the same.
The whole concept of the universe, the multiverse, the galaxies, the whole bit. I mean, we're just basically learning a bit more about the planets that are nearby us, never mind everything that's out there. And I think right now, a lot of the stuff that's out there that the scientists are coming up with is just philosophy. Of course, there's no proof about it. Really interesting video to watch. I got through the first level of it. There's 3 others to go, so it's quite lengthy, but really interesting.
Yeah, it's about
if
4
anybody's
hours.
interested, where can they pick up a copy of this video?
If someone goes to my website, naturalsolutionsradio.com or ElieZerBenJoseph.com, there's going to be information where you can get that. And I just finished my book that I wrote called Stress. Stress Makes You Fat, Wrinkled, and Dead. I love the title, Fat, Wrinkled, and Dead. So I just finished that. It's up as an ebook, but it's being printed now as we speak, being published now. Someone can get that as an ebook on my site also. We're changing the site over from Natural Solutions Radio to Eliezer Ben Joseph. It's a big resource. I have about 35,000 articles on the website. If it's on health, from a vitamin, a mineral, an herb, an enzyme, a meditation, an exercise, anything having to do with holistic health, it's on my website. The only place I don't quote from is the Star, the Globe, and the National Enquirer, even though that's where everybody gets their health
blessings to
information.
you for that. Now, you mentioned that you do dark field live blood cell analysis.
Now, that's dark field live blood analysis. I have a microscope system that's on a video-enhanced fiber optic, so I can take a drop of blood, and we do 2 tests. One where there's a live smear. You just make a smear of the blood, and you can actually look at it live, moving on the screen. So we see if the blood is all clumped together, and it can give you an indication of the general nutritional status of the body. Is the blood thick, sticky? Are the cells shaped properly? Are they too large, too small? You can see inflammatory responses that are in the blood. You can see how well the white blood cells move. You don't just get a number when you send your blood work to a lab and they send you back numbers. What we get is the quality of your blood. How well are the white blood cells working? How well is your red blood cells flowing around? So the quality is much more important than just the quantity, where you get a number.
Right. I do the same thing in my office. It's an older model Olympus. It's a huge thing, worth about 10 grand when it was built. Now,
Yeah, mine was
what I want to
25.
ask you.
So it's the newest stuff.
Now, there's this phenomenon that people are hearing about, something called Morgellons. Now,
That's Morgellons disease.
Is
Yes,
this something
we see
that
it
you
quite often.
look at all or see within your live blood analysis?
Yes. I've taken samples that some of the patients have brought in, and we put them under the microscope, and we don't know what they are. They are threads. They look like red and blue threads, but those are the most common colors, a red and a blue, and they're coming right out of the skin. And we have no idea, and you'll get sores, like you scratch, you start with a little itch and then they scratch. It's almost like a little parasite or something coming out. But the fibers we have not seen alive. But how do those fibers get in there? How do they come out like that? We're not sure, but it's a new disease that's very, very difficult. And we see it in Gulf War syndrome and veterans and some really bizarre stuff going around now that we've never seen before.
Yeah, with what I do, I find a lot of intended stuff. So let's say witchcraft, voodoo, all that negative energy, intended stuff, and it manifests into something within your body. It'll take something negative a pathogen or some kind of toxin and create something within your body. What I generally see is kind of like almost like glass rods within the
you
blood.
Can, yes, like crystals, like glass rods, or you'll see very small rod-formed bacteria.
Yes,
you can see different types of bacteria, spirochetes, and different types, whatever showing. You can see yeast and yeast buds in there. So one of the greatest things about that instrument is it's probably the greatest patient compliant tool ever, because when you see your blood live and then 2 or 3 weeks later you come back to see has it improved, either that blood is improved or the person didn't do what I said, or I said the wrong thing. Very rare I say the wrong thing.
It is a fantastic tool to see what's changed. Number one, it's coming out of your finger. It's your blood, and you're seeing it in real time. You're not sending the blood out to get tested. You're not looking for a printout of whatever it is. There it is on the screen right in front of you. And you can see some amazing things. You see white blood cells chasing a bacteria around. You see all kinds of different parasitic activity. It's a very interesting way to really know what's happening in your body.
Absolutely. It's almost amazing. I really think that it is. I've been doing it since 1983, and there's very few people doing it that long. Okay, and so I've had many microscopes over the years. Now they're just getting really quite good. The fiber optics and the monitors, everything is becoming, even the video enhanced. I know my old video was on top of the microscope, was about 2 feet long. Now it's this teeny tiny little video that's all digital and like
they're getting
12
all compact
megapixels
and easy to use. Mine's a big boat anchor. But boys, have got quality. Now, back to the topic of the show, the hidden healing around your home. Now, I'm quite sure that a lot of my listeners already are like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what to do. But I'm willing to bet that, Eliezer, you're going to tell us a little something that we don't know tonight.
Oh, I will indeed. Before you get into finding things to get better, when you're talking about a medicine chest, a medicine cabinet, it's always because something happened. And, whether it's a scrape or a bite or a cut or a broken bone, or you're sick with something or you have a pathology, you're reaching for something. And the whole idea is, how do we create the optimum medicine cabinet, which means I don't need that. Now, if you scrape yourself, burn yourself, that's one thing. But it's the idea is, how can I get healthy so that I don't get sick at all? As an example, my grandchildren, I have 2 granddaughters. One has just turned 11 and the other one is 8 years old. And they have never been sick one day in their life, not a cold, nothing. So think of that. When you just don't get sick, then you're not having to reach for something. So that's number one, which I think is really probably the most important. And what people are not understanding is their thyroid, their adrenals, and their pituitary. How that anterior pituitary, your thyroid, and your adrenals all work together. And what happens, there's a little known condition that has to do with the thyroid that has to do with hibernation. Do you know what I mean? Animals, some animals still hibernate, but humans don't hibernate. Yet the brain remembers hibernation. And so what happens during the winter, if you go back 100,000 years or you look at animals, during the winter, vegetation starts to disappear. And you don't eat all of the green vegetation, and you're not out in the sun in the same amount. So what happens, first and foremost, your magnesium goes down because you're not getting greens. Magnesium has vitamin K1, and that gets converted by bacteria in your system to K2, and then you get low in vitamin D3. So those three, the magnesium, the K2, and the vitamin D, all go down. And so what happens, your brain thinks you're supposed to go into hibernation. So Chris, what happens with hibernation? Are we having fast metabolism or very slow metabolism?
Well, everything slows right down to a snail's pace. It could because your heart rate goes down, your metabolism goes down, your need for nutrients goes down.
Your oxygen consumption goes way down. Okay, so think of all of those symptoms that people have, fatigue and stress, and oh my gosh, I can't think clearly, or think of the issues that are really off. There's two things. One is the hibernation and the other is the stress. So one of the things that we do is we look at a blood test. We want to make sure that someone's vitamin D levels get up to at least between 85 and 95 when you have a blood test. And that when they're up at those numbers, you are actually cutting your risk of every known cancer by 75%. Now, think of that number, Chris. If there was a drug on the market that lowered your cancer risk by 12%, tell me that wouldn't be on front page news in every newspaper in the world.
Absolutely.
And here's a vitamin that's a nothing vitamin, and they really it costs pennies, and look what it does is it's actually a hormone more than a vitamin. Now, there's some really unique research on that. Back in the 1920s, they discovered that there was something in sunlight that helped prevent the disease called rickets. You know, you see people with real bow legs, and they're when they were born and growing up, their bones were very soft, and so they become deformed. That's rickets. That's a form of rickets, and it's a vitamin D deficiency. So what happened is they started in the 1920s to irradiate everything with UV light to make vitamin D. They even irradiated beer. So, beer drinkers can make sure they get enough vitamin D.
Well, I got lots
and
of
within
vitamin D.
2 to 3 years, the hospitals in the United States started to go bankrupt, that they were actually not having enough sick people. So what they did is they changed how vitamin D is measured, because people were taking like 10 and 20 milligrams. Now, 20 milligrams is a nothing. It's really very, very little. But they decided to change the name, and they would call it units instead of international units instead of milligrams. So 20 milligrams became hundreds of thousands of units. So when you say, oh, you're taking 1 million units of vitamin D, that sounds like a lot.
Sounds like way too much.
So they were able to, of course, talk about toxicity if you take too much. So from then on, they took vitamin D pretty much off the market and out of the food supply because they were really irradiating and they were making a lot of vitamin D. Well, now people are in the know again, and books are coming out. And oh my gosh, since probably 1960s, there has been maybe 60,000 studies on vitamin D. Canada did something unique. They were giving out about 5 years ago. They started giving out vitamin D capsules to a group of the population, and they've only had, the last statistics I read, they only had 15 people die of the flu because they were giving out free vitamin D. So that's number one. If you get your vitamin D level up, if you get your magnesium level up, and you take a vitamin K2, so for every 10,000 units of vitamin D, you want to take a good 1,000 micrograms of vitamin K2, and you want the MK4, MK7 type, and it will prevent sickness. And then the other thing is iodine. Now, think of iodine. There's a phobia about iodine in this country. Have you ever had surgery?
Can't say I have.
Okay, what do someone get painted all over their body?
Yeah, they used to call it mercurochrome, right?
Right, and Benadine.
Iodine.
Now it's called
Iodine.
Benadine. And they paint that. It's iodine, and they paint it all over your body. And they paint that so you won't get an infection, a disinfection, any kind. It's a disinfectant. So here's what happens. And this is why the blood test for your thyroid is insignificant. It doesn't really give you good information. To know whether your thyroid is working on a cellular level, you have to take body temperature. So if you take your body temperature first thing in the morning before you wake up, before you get out of bed, not before you wake up, obviously. So before you get out of bed, it should be 97.8 or higher. Once you've been up 4 or 5 hours, it needs to be 98.4 or higher. So when it's lower than that, it doesn't matter what the TSH or any of the blood tests show. It shows that your thyroid is low. And here's what's happening. Your thyroid gland produces this compound called T4. The T is a tyrosine. It's an amino acid. And the 4 are 4 atoms of iodine. Now, that's only a storage hormone, but your blood goes through the body every 8.5 to 9 minutes. It makes a completed circuit. And when it does that, it gets bathed in the thyroid and it gets bathed in the iodine. So iodine disinfects everything in the blood. Now, when the rest of the body needs iodine, the brain sends a signal, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, to send that T4 into the bloodstream. It immediately goes to the liver, the lung, the pancreas, and the kidney, and it drops off one of the iodines in those organs. So now you have blood going through those organs, and it disinfects all of the blood going through the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas, and the lungs. Now you have this T3 because one of the iodines has been left in the bloodstream floating around, and anything that's in the blood that doesn't belong, that bumps up against that thyroid, becomes deactivated. Now this T3 goes to the cells of your body, sticks to the surface of the cell, leaves one of the iodine on the surface, and then it goes inside the cell, and it becomes T2 because it left an iodine on the surface of the cell. Anything touching your cell gets disinfected. Inside the cell, one of the iodines immediately goes into the mitochondria, and so it disinfects the mitochondria, and that's where energy is produced. Your ATP energy is produced in the mitochondria. Now it's T1, and then the last iodine goes into the nucleus so that every time cells reproduce, that it prevents genetic chromosome damage. But here's the problem in today's society. How many people would you say eat something made out of a grain product? A bread, cake, pie, cookie, chip, cracker, muffin, tortilla, spaghetti, noodle. How often do people eat one of those?
Bob loves pancakes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And how often are people eating something from one of those categories? Every day.
Every minute
times.
of the day.
Okay. How often would you say someone drinks either tap water or at least takes a shower in tap water? Everybody?
Every day.
Every day.
How many people would you say use fluoride toothpaste? Most people.
That's a trick question.
Not me.
Not me either. So if you go back to when you were in high school and you look at that periodic table of elements, do you remember that chart? And it had all the elements on it. Well,
Yes.
when you look at column 7B, that's called the halogen group of metals. And at the bottom of that column is astatine, then you have iodine, then you have bromine, chlorine, and fluorine. And where the element appears on that column, the higher up the column it is, the stronger it is. Now, the brain thinks they're all the same, except they're not. Only iodine works. But when you eat a grain product, the preservative in all grains is bromated vegetable oil, so the bromine goes in. It displaces the iodine. When you shower in a chlorine tap water, 10-minute shower is the equivalent of drinking 10 glasses of chlorinated water. So again, the chlorine goes in and displaces more of the iodine off the T4, T3, T2, and all of those. When you brush your teeth with fluoride toothpaste, the fluoride's above chlorine, it displaces the rest of the iodine. So on the molecule of the thyroid, there's no iodine. There's only bromine, chlorine, and fluorine. So when you get a blood test, it only measures the circulating thyroid. It doesn't tell you that there's iodine on the molecule. What tells you whether iodine is there and that your thyroid is working is your body temperature. So you can rest assured that when body temperature is low, there's not enough iodine in the system.
Exactly.
So those three nutrients, the magnesium, the K2, the vitamin D, and the iodine, all work together to prevent any kind of sickness. And when your thyroid is healthy and you have enough iodine on the thyroid and filling up all the receptor sites, you can't get three things. You can't get any viral infection. You can't get any bacterial infection, and you can't get cancer. So what would doctors do without bacterial infections, viral infections, and cancer?
Go golfing.
Golfing and go bankrupt. So when we talk about this medicine cabinet, the first thing I teach is let's not get sick in the first place. Now, accidents, as we per se call them, I don't think there's really accidents. Things happen. And what is it John Lennon said, poop happens and then you die kind of thing. So I don't know if we can say the S word on the radio. And when you're looking at a good medicine cabinet, one of the things that people can look at is spices. There's spices. There's so many different kinds of spices, and certain spices are almost radically critical to have in your dietary.
Okay, one of the questions that we have in the chat is about cayenne pepper.
Cayenne pepper, that is probably one of the greatest herbs that's ever been created. Because externally, if you're in a forest, as an example, I take cayenne pepper wherever I go, whenever I go camping or anywhere. Remember those old 35 millimeter camera little plastic things? You don't see those anymore. They were plastic and that carried the 35 millimeter film. Well, that's a perfect size. If you can go to an old camera shop and you can get those little plastic containers, that's perfect to fill with cayenne pepper. Put it in a briefcase or put it in a garage or in your truck or your car, and you always have cayenne pepper with you. Cayenne pepper stops bleeding when you have any kind of cut externally or internally. So cayenne pepper, capsicum, that's the hot part of it. The hotter it is, the better it is. And now there's stuff, it's measured in what's called herbal units, herbal thermal units. And so you can get like 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. One of my mentors, John Christopher, he used to get this African bird pepper that was 250,000 herbal thermal units, where normal cayenne pepper is about 70,000 to 90,000. Now, since they've been creating cayenne pepper and hybridizing it, there's now some that go up to 1 million and 1.25 million herbal thermal units. And oh my gosh, it's like how people eat that hot stuff. I have no idea.
I've got a California Reaper in my office. I'm tempted to bite it right now.
Oh, see, are you one of those that love that hot stuff? And
I love the hot as long as it tastes good.
Oh, I lived in Louisiana. I was a professional deep sea diver for the oil companies. I did underwater welding. And they used to have these Tabasco sauces, different Louisiana Tabasco sauces. And if you were on the land, every Sunday there was some kind of like a flea market somewhere. And every booth had its own kind of a Tabasco sauce. One would be called devil sauce. Another one is called hotter than suicide, hotter than hell. And you'd see these guys eating that with a chip. There'd be a bowl of chips, and they're eating it, sweat pouring down out of their brain, going, oh, it's hot. Oh,
Boy, that's
give
good,
me another one. Oh, give me another one. And I'm looking at these guys and going, you are crazy. What the hell are you doing? Do you like? And so there's people that just love that stuff. I can't do it. It'll burn me bad. I'm a gringo, so I can't eat that stuff. That's hot. But it'll stop internal bleeding very quickly, and I've used it in my practice. It will stop a heart attack in 30 seconds. If you ever thought you were having a heart attack, you don't care about burning your butt or your stomach. You get a teaspoon or half a teaspoon minimum, put it in a glass of water, stir it up, and drink it down. It'll stop a heart attack in 30 seconds. I had a patient call me once during a heart attack. And I had her put the phone down. We called the ambulance on the other line and sent it to her. But in the meantime, she went to the medicine, her spice thing, and got some cayenne pepper, took a teaspoon, drank it down. By the time the ambulance got there, her heart attack had subsided. And when they did the blood test, they showed, yes, you had a heart attack. And at the same time, there was no damage from the heart attack. Cayenne pepper is a miracle herb. It's on par with turmeric. And, think of how much research is on curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric right now, or cinnamon. Between cinnamon, turmeric, and cayenne pepper, those three are probably, it's like having a medicine cabinet wherever you go, taking some of that.
Well, that's
cinnamon,
what we had way
true
before
cinnamon,
all these medications, right? That's what we had.
Go ahead.
That's what we had before all these medications with all these plant-based types of herbs.
Absolutely. And that's what people used. There was activated charcoal that you would be able to get if you ever had food poisoning or you needed to draw something out. There were clays, and there's different colored clays, bentonite clays and different red clays and white clays and French green clays. And they're used as masks on your face to draw poisons out of your skin, or you can take it internally and they actually draw out toxic poisons
they
from your intestinal tract.
Yeah. Now, we got another question from my wonderful friend Ty about iodine.
Yes.
Lugos drops. How many drops? He usually takes about 4 to 6. Would he need more of the iodine drops?
It depends which are you using, a 2% solution or a 5% solution. If you can get good Lugols, the color should always remain the same, meaning it should not be sometimes a little lighter or a little darker. Then it means that it's being mixed in somebody's garage. As far as I know, there's only one real pharmaceutical grade Lugols, and actually I think it comes out of Canada where we buy ours. There's a distributor in Montana or something where we get it, but it's from Health Naturally, and they are a pharmaceutical grade 5% solution, and I really like that because one drop is 6.5 or 6.25 milligrams. Now, not micrograms, milligrams. There's a phobia in the United States about taking iodine. Now, if there was any kind of nuclear catastrophe, and there is one actually going on called Fukushima. It's been going on for 6 years now, and nothing changing in that. But the government would hand out iodine tablets or capsules, and they would usually be 200 milligrams. That's milligrams that they would have people take, and that's to fill up your thyroid with iodine. Then you spill out the rest, and this way you won't pick up radioactive iodine and get thyroid cancer. So I usually have people start with one drop. Now, if you're allergic to iodine, like when you've had a scan of some kind or something and you're allergic to it, that's a different kind of iodine. So that's a radioactive iodine that they use that has a half-life of 48 hours. So it disappears within 48 hours. But I have people start with 1 drop, and you stay on 1 drop for 4, 5, or 6 days. Now, if you're not having any heart palpitations, then you go to 2 drops, and then you stay at 2 drops for 4, 5, or 6 days. And again, you put this in a little water. Don't put it on your tongue. It's nasty. It'll taste terrible. And you slowly build up to about 5 drops. You can take, it's close to 40 milligrams. Now, Dr. Brownstein and Dr. Canal, they go up as high as 100 milligrams, and you stay at that 100 milligram for 6 months to a year so that you push out of the body the bromine, chlorine, and fluorine that are binding the receptor sites where iodine goes. So you have to take a high amount of iodine to get rid of that bromine, chlorine, and fluorine. And it does take a while, but you can measure it. And so I have everybody take, there's almost universally, everybody takes a vitamin D3. And again, for every 10,000 units of vitamin D3, you take a 1,000 microgram K2. So those are always together. And then usually a magnesium, because people don't get enough greens, and then iodine. And if you do those 4, you can revive the thyroid. Now, there's a condition that people talk about, fibromyalgia. You've heard of that. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have that. That's not a new disease. It's a new name for a disease. Before 1973, every doctor in the world knew that fibromyalgia was nothing more than low thyroid, because low thyroid causes severe fatigue with muscle aches and pains and bone pain. So fibromyalgia is muscle aches and pains and bone pain with severe fatigue. Now, you have to have 18 out of 27 or 28 spots that are sore when you touch it. So, the person touches it, and it's sore here, and it's sore here, and every time I touch here, it's sore, and I touch there, it's sore, and we then tell them, don't worry, we'll fix your broken finger. So that was one of my blonde jokes, but we don't use that. So, but that's iodine, and that's what you do. You want to make sure you're getting enough iodine, and you get up to that 40, 50 milligrams. You stay there for a good while, and it'll purge out the bromine, chlorine, and fluorine, and you're going to get better, and then you don't get sick. My grandchildren have been on iodine in utero, because I had my daughter on them, and then they've been on 1 drop since they're born. And like I said, they're 11 and 8, and they've never had any sickness, not even a cold. So there's a lot you can do. Turmeric now. We know turmeric, and it's not turmeric. Everybody pronounces it turmeric, but it's T-U-R, turmeric. And that's got to be one of the strongest known anti-inflammatories known to man. It's one of the strongest anti-cancers. So, when you start looking at turmeric, that's that in India. When I studied in a temple in the Himalaya mountains in India, that was used. You made a paste out of it with yak milk. You didn't collect cow milk. You collected yak butter and yak milk. I mean, it sounds great, but anyway, you would cook that and you'd mix that, and it's a the Celebrex drug that's they use that quite a bit for arthritis because it's a COX-2 inhibitor. Well, turmeric is a COX-2 inhibitor, and these are cytokines that cause severe inflammation and pain. So turmeric. People are now drinking a lot of green drinks, greens with blueberries and pineapples, and there's all kinds of different good green drinks. I suggest putting in a half a teaspoon to a full teaspoon of organic, non-irradiated turmeric in every smoothie. And no question that it's going to really make a difference in somebody's health. We know we use it extensively for cancer.
We got a question about apple cider vinegar.
Oh, that is one of the best. That's another super There's like so many ways of using apple cider vinegar. It's just one of those. There was actually just a study that I just read. I can't remember where it was. This family. It was just a small study with a family with 5 girls, and 3 of the girls took 2 to 3 tablespoons every single day of apple cider vinegar, and they died past 100 years old. All 3 of them died 100, 102, 105. The other 2 girls didn't like it and never took it, and they died in their early 80s. So one of the great things about apple cider vinegar is its probiotics. So everybody takes probiotic pills, and they have to be enteric coated. If you take a probiotic pill, it's got to be coated with something that won't digest in your stomach, because you'll lose most of the bacteria.
Right.
But you're going to get maybe 5, 10. Some of the high ones, you might get 20 billion bacteria. But there's 2 foods, apple cider vinegar and raw sauerkraut, where you can get 10 trillion organisms when you eat it. 4 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar with the mother in it, with the true mother in it, gives you about 10 trillion bacteria. 3 or 4 forkfuls of raw sauerkraut will give you 10 trillion bacteria. So if someone wants to correct, as an example, leaky gut syndrome, which is rampant because then you absorb all kinds of large protein molecules and things, and it can cause inflammatory responses. Well, that will repair leaky gut syndrome. So it really balances out your internal, what we call the ecosystem, or your internal, what's called the biodome. And it's that, think of this, we have about 100 trillion bacteria in our being, but only about 15 trillion are really us. The rest are bacteria that live in us or on top of us. Every square inch of our skin has millions of the bacteria that are your soldiers. They give their lives for you. And so we want to help protect them. And the internal bacteria, it's phenomenal in the sense that good bacteria is what detoxes our whole body. So glutathione is produced with that, and that detoxes the food that we eat. Most of the glutathione is in your intestinal tract from your mouth all the way to your butt, and it's detoxifying the chemicals that are in the food.
And that's a good antioxidant too.
Oh, it's a super detoxifier, antioxidant. So apple cider vinegar, it can help detoxify the body. It's used for weight loss. It'll do for sinus infections and sore throats. A great tea in the morning during the winter is like a peppermint spearmint tea with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and some raw honey. And it's a very refreshing, super cleansing, and maybe a squirt of lemon. And it's just very, very refreshing for just colds and flus and sore throats and all of that, and especially on a cold day.
Somebody's asking about what can help with diabetic neuropathy.
Oh, that one's difficult. Now, there has been some minor research on lipoic acid with diabetic neuropathy, but you got to take a good high doses in the 1,000 milligrams, and that does throw off the B complex when you do that. So anytime you take high doses of lipoic acid, and that's the R form of lipoic acid, make sure you're taking some good B complex with it.
Balance.
Then the other thing that can really help is you can get high-grade insoles made out of magnets. Now, I use a company called Serenity 2000. and they're high-grade biological magnets. And they will, that when you put it in your shoes or you put it in a pair of socks when you go to sleep at night, it'll prevent that burning neuropathy that you have. The other thing that you can do is called exercise with oxygen therapy. And you would do like a power plate, whole body vibration. So you would stand on that and up on your toes, back on your heels, up on your toes, flat on your feet, back on your heels, while you're breathing oxygen. And if you do a little exercise like that while you're breathing oxygen, it's one of the strongest known anti-inflammatories, the oxygen. We have a system at our clinic here where people are exercising for 15 minutes at a time, breathing pure oxygen every breath they breathe, not from an oxygen concentrator, because you can only get 5 or 10 liters per minute. They're breathing from a big bag that we have a special material, and we fill it up with oxygen, about 900 liters of oxygen. And then we attach the hose to that bag, and they breathe from that bag, so that every breath, which is when you're exercising, you'll breathe about 4 or 5 liters of air per breath.
What about ozone therapy? Is that similar?
Well, ozone, you can't really breathe ozone unless you run it through olive oil, and then it produces what's called ozonates. So you don't want to really breathe ozone. It can be very irritating to the lungs because it cleans out all the hydrocarbons that are in the lungs from people breathing smoke and car exhaust. So it'll really feel terrible. And you might even get what's called pulmonary edema. So the lung fluid will build up in the lungs, but that fluid will go away. So again, you got to be very careful. But ozone bagging, as an example, that's something that's used. But we're talking about breathing high volume. So let's say someone breathes, when you're exercising, you might breathe 40 to 50 times per minute. So let's say you're doing 4 liters of air per breath at 40 breaths per minute. That's 160 liters of air per minute. And when you do from this oxygen, from this bag, we're having them breathe 160, 140, 160 liters of oxygen per minute. We're the first place that I think of that we've reversed the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And since January, we've done 2 patients with ALS and reversed their paralysis with ALS. And that's Lou Gehrig's disease.
Mm-hmm. These questions we're getting, stuff you got in your pantry at home. Okay?
Absolutely. Now, with oxygen, you got to get a concentrator. You know, buy one, a 5 liter or a 10 liter per minute concentrator. And then you get this special bag. It's about 5 feet by 7 feet. And you fill up. It takes about, with a 5 liter per minute, it takes about 2 hours to fill up the bag. Or with a 10 liter, it takes about an hour. And then we have oxygen bottles, so we top off the bags in between clients. And we're eradicating autoimmune diseases and MS. And like I said, we had 3 patients wheelchair bound with Parkinson's, and there now you can't tell. One has a little cane that he uses, but that's it. You can't tell they have Parkinson's. We did one, a female with Tourette's syndrome. I don't know. You know what Tourette's syndrome is? That's the tics, you know, where they involuntary tick all the time. And you can't tell her anymore. She used to not be able to talk or drink a glass of water and hold anything. Now she's doing great. Again, it's high volumes of oxygen with high velocity of blood. And what you're doing, you're getting the water part of the blood, which is the plasma, and you're getting it up to 10 times oxygen saturation, which is huge. It's actually higher saturation than hyperbaric oxygen.
No oxygen thing, that's when things die off. If your blood flow to your knees is cut off, that's when all the cartilage starts to deteriorate and you get bone on bone.
There's another condition called a brownout, where the tissue's not dying, but it's just enough oxygen to keep just barely going. So that's where these tissues go into these states of hibernation. And that's what we were talking about. The thyroid goes down, iodine, and all of these. So all of the hibernation, cells get less and less oxygen. So the way we wake up the brain and we wake up the thyroid, the adrenals, is one, we do the exercise with oxygen. And then we, of course, give those nutrients that I said. And then we use far infrared saunas, because that fools the brain into thinking it's hot out again. So think of it. How many people are suffering from hypertension or insulin resistance or high sugars in their blood or high salt in their blood? It's rampant. And the reason is that what they found, that there's an evolutionary reason for the higher blood sugar, the higher blood pressure, and the higher salt. When it's snowing outside, what did the government put on the roads?
Salt.
Exactly. So what they found is inside the body that if your blood pressure goes up about 10, 20 points, or your sugars go up and the salt goes up, what happens is your blood, instead of freezing at 32 degrees, it goes down to 20 degrees and it freezes at 20. So it was an evolutionary thing for hibernation. The problem is nobody's hibernating, but your brain doesn't know that. So the sugars go up, the blood pressure goes up, all the nutrients go down, thyroid keeps going down, and everybody has the blues, the blahs, aches and pains, can't sleep. As an example, women. How many women are suffering from heavy menstrual bleeding with clotting? It's like most of the women that I come in contact, they all have heavy bleeding with clotting. They all have fibrocystic breast disease, or they have cysts in the breast, or they have fibroids in the uterus, or cysts in the uterus, or they have endometriosis. Now, before 1973, every doctor in the world knew that those conditions were caused by low iodine and low vitamin D3. So again, the thyroid goes down and a woman will get heavy periods and clotting. We put them on the iodine. We help to rebuild their thyroid, and all of that issues that a woman has with her menstrual cycle all goes away.
Interesting.
So,
Dr. Ben Joseph, we're about out of time. Why don't you let everybody know how they can access you and your website, please?
Yes, my website is naturalsolutionsradio.com, and everything's getting ready to move over to ElieZerBenJoseph.com. And they can also listen to my radio show and call in. It's a call-in talk radio, and we stream all over the world. And it's every Saturday morning, and they can go to, like I said, to Natural Solutions Radio, and there's a live streaming button, and just click that button, and then you'll get us. And it's every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock Mountain Time, and it runs till 10 o'clock Mountain Time. And then we stream all of the shows, and we archive all of the shows, so they're all in there. Boy, this was a quick hour.
Time flies when you're having fun. Our guest tonight has been Dr. Eliezer Ben Joseph. Thank you so much for finally being on. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it has been a great pleasure. I really thank you. You can have me on anytime. I love it. And I love doing radio, and I can tell you do too. So
be careful what you wish for. I think we're going to have you back on very soon. This is Chris Kehler. We're out of here.